Have you ever wondered why the most powerful people in the world often walk alone? Not lonely, alone. There's a difference, a big one. Most people run from silence. They fear being alone with their thoughts. They fill every second with noise, with distractions, with people who don't even matter, just to avoid that quiet moment where everything becomes real. But here's the truth. Silence doesn't expose weakness. It reveals it, so it can be rebuilt. Because those who face themselves in the dark, in the silence, in the solitude, they come out stronger than anyone who's ever been surrounded by applause. Being alone is not a punishment. It's a preparation. And if you stay with this message till the end, you'll learn why solitude is not just strength. It's the secret language of leaders. You'll discover how those who master being alone master themselves, and how those who master themselves rule the world around them. That's your reward. Power, real power, the kind that can't be taken away. But let's slow down for a moment, because the world taught you something else, didn't it? They told you being alone means being broken. They said it's something to escape from, something to fix. They painted solitude as something reserved for the rejected, the failed, the forgotten. And yet, when you really look at the people who shape history, they all have something in common. They retreat. They go silent. They walk alone. Why? Because that's where transformation begins. That's where growth gets real. It's easy to act strong in a crowd. It's easy to wear a mask when people are watching. But the question is, who are you when no one's there to clap? When no one's there to like, to follow, to praise? That's where character is born. You see, the greatest battles are not fought in front of millions. They're fought in bedrooms at 2 a.m., in long walks with no destination, in moments when you stare at the ceiling and finally ask yourself, what am I doing with my life? Those moments are not weakness. Those moments are where your power begins. Because when you learn to face your own voice, when you can sit alone with your flaws, your dreams, your fears, and not run, you become unbreakable. That's what they don't tell you. Alone is not empty. Alone is full of growth, full of clarity, full of truth. And it's in those moments of being alone that something inside you sharpens. You begin to hear yourself, perhaps for the first time. The noise fades, the doubts quiet down, and your true voice, not the one shaped by the world, but the one that's always been there, starts to speak. That voice, that's leadership, because if you can't hear yourself, you'll always be echoing someone else. Think about it. Every great communicator, every respected leader, every strong presence you've ever admired, they speak differently. Not louder, not more, just clearer, stronger, deeper, because they've spent time alone with their truth. They don't talk to impress, they talk to impact. And that power, it comes from silence, it comes from solitude. So if you feel like you're walking alone right now, good. That's where the shift begins. That's where the foundation gets laid. You're not behind, you're ahead, because while the rest of the world is chasing validation, you're building it from within. And that's the kind of strength that can't be shaken. So keep watching. Because if you've ever felt lost in the silence or unsure in your isolation, what you're about to learn next will turn your quiet into confidence. Stay with it, because by the end of this message, you won't just understand why being alone is a power. You'll feel it. They say being alone is dangerous. But what's truly dangerous is never meeting the real you. Solitude is not a void. It's a mirror. And when you finally look into it without turning away, you begin to see what you're really made of. The world is loud. It's filled with opinions, judgments, noise. And in all that chaos, it's easy to forget who you are, easy to forget what you believe, what you want, what you're fighting for. That's why time alone is not a luxury. It's a necessity. Because in solitude, clarity is born. It's where you hear your own heartbeat, steady, strong, quiet. It's where you sort through the lies you've been told and uncover the truth that's been buried underneath years of doubt. It's not about escaping people. It's about finally connecting with yourself. You can't lead others if you haven't first led yourself. And you can't lead yourself if your mind is constantly being filled by someone else's voice. The mind needs space to breathe, to think, to align. Solitude gives you that space. And in that space, clarity rises like the sun, slowly, powerfully, undeniably. Great communicators don't speak more than others. They speak with purpose, with intention. And that begins long before any word is spoken. It begins in the quiet, in the decision to stop performing and start being real, being present, being deeply connected to what matters. When you're alone, you realize what you truly value, not what society told you to chase, not what friends convinced you to want, but what your soul genuinely longs for. And when you reconnect with that, with your personal truth, your words begin to carry weight. That's why solitude is a weapon, not to hurt, but to sharpen. It makes you think deeper, feel deeper, and speak from a place most people have never even visited within themselves. And that's when people start listening. Confidence doesn't begin on a stage. It begins in silence. It begins when no one's watching, no one's clapping, no one's validating. That's where real self-belief is born, not through applause, but through understanding. Most people search for confidence in the wrong places. They think it comes from achievement, popularity, or approval. But those things are fragile. They can be taken away in a second. True confidence, that comes from knowing yourself, deeply, honestly, without filters. When you sit alone long enough, you face the things you usually hide, your fears, your insecurities, your regrets. At first, it's uncomfortable, but over time, that discomfort becomes power. Because once you stop running from yourself, you become untouchable. That's the shift most never make. They keep themselves busy, loud, surrounded, just to avoid meeting the one person they should know best, themselves. But leaders, they choose differently. They embrace solitude not as punishment, but as preparation. They use it to build something most people lack, inner certainty. And when you have that, you don't need to prove anything. You just speak and people feel it. Because your voice isn't echoing others. It's coming from a place that's real. Confidence is quiet because it doesn't beg for attention. It commands it. It doesn't come from trying to impress others. It comes from being at peace with who you are. That peace is powerful. That peace is what gives weight to your words, strength to your presence, and calm to your communication. So if you're walking a quiet road right now, good. Let it shape you. Let it strengthen you. Because the moment you learn to be alone, truly alone, and still stand tall, that's the moment your confidence becomes unshakable. In a world that moves fast, clarity is rare. Most people are overwhelmed, confused, always reacting, never thinking. They chase more, do more, speak more, but deep down they feel lost. Not because they're weak, but because they're disconnected from their own mind. That's where alone time becomes powerful. It creates space. And in that space, you begin to see, really see. When you're alone, you're no longer performing. You're not adjusting your thoughts to please others. You're not rushing to meet expectations. You're just there, face to face with what you truly think, truly feel, and truly want. That kind of honesty doesn't happen in noise. It only happens in silence. Most people don't lack motivation. They lack direction. And direction only comes when you slow down enough to listen to what your heart is trying to say beneath the pressure, the fear, and the noise of the world. Think about it. How can you build a life you love if you never stop to ask what that life even looks like? Alone time gives you the courage to ask, and more importantly, the clarity to answer. That's why the most focused, driven, clear-minded people you'll ever meet all protect their time alone. They don't fear it, they need it. Because in that silence, ideas are born. Visions take shape. Plans form. Clarity is the foundation of power. And power doesn't start with movement, it starts with understanding. So take the time, sit in the quiet, face the questions. Because when the world tries to pull you in every direction, only clarity can hold you steady. And clarity, that's not found in crowds, it's found in solitude. Before anyone believes in you, you have to believe in yourself. But that belief, real, grounded, lasting belief, it doesn't come from shouting louder than others. It doesn't come from being seen or being praised. It begins in silence. It begins when you sit alone and face the person you really are. Not the version shaped by other people's opinions. Not the one built for social media. The real you, raw, unsure, still in progress. At first, that silence is uncomfortable because it forces you to see your fears, your flaws, the parts of you that you've been hiding from. But the moment you stop hiding, something shifts. You begin to own who you are. You begin to understand your story, not just the highlight reel, but the pain, the failure, the confusion. And in that understanding, confidence is born, not the fake kind that needs constant approval, the quiet kind that doesn't. When you spend time in silence, you stop comparing, you stop performing, you start becoming, and slowly your voice becomes steady, not because you learned how to impress, but because you're finally speaking from a place of truth. That's what people feel when a real leader talks, not volume, not perfection, but alignment. Their words match their life. Their voice matches their belief, and that power only comes when you faced yourself without looking away. So if you're seeking confidence, don't look outside. Don't wait for someone to give it to you. Go into the silence. Sit with your thoughts. Let your mind breathe. And watch what happens when you finally hear your own voice without interruption. That voice, the one that rises from within, is the one the world needs to hear. We're taught to toughen up, to hide pain, to pretend we're okay. But real strength isn't about hiding. It's about handling. And nothing teaches emotional strength better than solitude. When you're alone, everything surfaces. The pain you buried, the regrets you ignored, the questions you kept pushing away. In that silence, there's nowhere to run. And that's exactly why it's powerful. Because when you stop running, you start healing. You learn to sit with your emotions, not fight them, not fear them. You face them head on. And something strange happens. They stop controlling you. You stop reacting. You start responding. You realize that sadness isn't weakness, that fear isn't failure. They're just part of the journey. And when you understand them, they lose their grip on you. Solitude becomes your training ground. It teaches you how to break without falling apart, how to bend without breaking. It teaches you how to breathe through the storm instead of getting blown away by it. Most people try to escape their emotions, but escape only delays the pain. Leaders don't escape. They endure. They go through it, not around it. Because every emotion you face alone becomes a strength you carry with you. And that strength changes how you show up in the world. You become calm in chaos, clear in confusion, strong in struggle. People notice, not because you're louder, but because you're grounded. That emotional strength doesn't come from reading books or watching videos. It comes from walking through the fire and realizing you're still standing. And that realization, it only comes when you're alone. The world is full of voices. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone has something to say. But the most dangerous thing, losing your own voice in the noise. That's what happens when you're never alone. You start living by default, not by decision. You start doing things because others do them, not because they matter to you. But when you finally get alone, something changes. The noise fades, the pressure lifts, and the truth, your truth, begins to speak. It doesn't shout, it whispers. And most people miss it because they're never still long enough to hear it. But those who sit in the quiet, those who lean in, they start to see things differently. They begin to question, is this what I want? Is this who I'm becoming? Is this the life I'm meant to live? That's not weakness, that's wisdom. Because the truth doesn't live in the crowd. It lives in the stillness. And when you learn to hear it, you start making decisions that fit you, not decisions made to impress others, not to avoid judgment, but choices that align with who you really are. And when you live from that place, something powerful happens. Your voice becomes clear, strong, undeniable, because truth doesn't need volume, it just needs conviction. So don't run from the quiet, step into it, listen closely, because what you hear there, that's your compass. And people will follow a person who knows where they're going, even if they walk alone. True strength in communication isn't about speaking more, it's about listening more. Most people think leaders have all the answers, but the truth is they spend more time listening than talking. When you're alone, you practice this skill without realizing it. You learn to listen to your own thoughts, to understand your feelings, and to recognize your true needs. This deep listening shapes the way you communicate with others. You stop reacting impulsively. Instead, you respond thoughtfully. Listening teaches patience and empathy. It opens your mind to new ideas and perspectives. It creates space for connection, trust, and respect. When you speak after truly listening, whether to yourself or others, your words carry weight. They resonate, they inspire. That's why successful people don't just talk, they listen first. And solitude is where this power begins. It trains your mind to be present and attentive, not distracted or defensive. The more time you spend alone, the better you become at tuning in to your inner voice and to those around you. Listening is a silent power. It transforms ordinary conversations into meaningful dialogue. It makes your communication clear, confident, and convincing. So don't fear being alone. Use that time to sharpen your listening. Because when you listen deeply, you speak wisely. And that's how leaders command attention, not by shouting louder, but by speaking stronger. The world will challenge you constantly. Pressure will come from every side, deadlines, opinions, failures, and setbacks. But mental toughness isn't about avoiding pressure. It's about how you respond when the pressure hits. And that toughness is forged in solitude. When you're alone, you face your doubts without distractions. You wrestle with the voice inside that says you can't. You confront the fear of failure and the weight of uncertainty. No one else is there to rescue you. No one else is there to make it easier. That's why alone time is a test and a training ground. You learn how to stay calm when chaos surrounds you. You build patience when results don't come fast. You discover how to keep going, even when no one is watching. Mental toughness is quiet. It doesn't boast or brag. It just keeps moving. And the more time you spend alone with your struggles, the stronger that toughness becomes. Because each moment of solitude is an opportunity to face your fears and choose courage instead. Strong people don't rely on the crowd's energy. They create their own. That's the power of being alone. It teaches you to stand firm no matter what comes your way. When you master that, nothing can shake you. You become unstoppable. Creativity doesn't come from noise or distraction. It comes from quiet moments where your mind is free to wander and explore. When you're surrounded by people or constant input, your brain is in survival mode, reacting, responding, trying to keep up. But when you step into solitude, your mind relaxes. Ideas start to flow naturally. You begin to connect dots that you never saw before. Many great inventors, artists, and thinkers spent hours alone, not just working, but thinking deeply, dreaming wildly. Alone time is the playground for your imagination. It's where problems find new solutions and new paths appear. When you embrace being alone, you're giving yourself permission to think differently, to innovate, to create something uniquely yours. This kind of creativity isn't just about art or invention. It's about how you approach your life, your work, your relationships. When your mind has space to breathe, you become a problem solver, a visionary, someone who sees beyond the obvious. So don't rush to fill every silence. Value your alone time, because that's where your greatest ideas are waiting to be born. Making decisions is one of the hardest parts of life. Too often, people rush to decide based on others' opinions or fleeting emotions. But clear, confident decisions come from deep reflection, a process that needs quiet time alone. When you're alone, you're free from outside pressure and distractions. You can weigh your options honestly without fear of judgment or haste. This stillness sharpens your mind and helps you focus on what truly matters. You learn to trust your instincts because you've listened to your inner voice. Strong leaders don't flip-flop or second-guess endlessly. They make decisions with calm certainty because they have clarity. That clarity is born in solitude. The more you practice being alone with your thoughts, the better you become at making tough calls. You stop fearing mistakes and start learning from them. You become decisive, not because you have all the answers, but because you trust yourself to find a way. Solitude is your secret weapon in decision-making. It's where you gather strength, insight, and confidence. And that's why being alone is not a weakness, it's a power. When you rely too much on others, you give away your power. True power comes from depending on yourself, your judgment, your strength, your will. Being alone forces you to stand on your own feet. It teaches you how to solve problems without someone else's help, how to trust your instincts, how to be your own guide. Self-reliance is the foundation of independence. It means you don't wait for approval or permission. You create your own path. The more comfortable you become in your own company, the less you depend on others for happiness or validation. This doesn't mean shutting people out. It means knowing that your peace and power come from within. Alone time is the training ground for this kind of freedom. Because when you learn to stand strong alone, you become unshakable even in a crowd. That's why the greatest leaders, thinkers, and creators often choose solitude. It's where they build the strength to lead themselves first. And that strength, it radiates outward. It inspires others. It commands respect. Being alone is not a sign of weakness or loneliness. It's a mark of courage and power. Discipline isn't easy. It requires focus, consistency, and control. And none of that happens when you're constantly distracted by others or the outside world. Solitude gives you the space to build discipline. When you're alone, there's no one to answer to but yourself, no one to blame or rely on. It's just you, your goals, your habits, your choices. In this quiet space, you learn to push through resistance, to say no to comfort and yes to growth. Self-discipline grows when you take full responsibility for your actions, when no one else is around to make excuses or offer easy outs. This is where the real work happens, the work that shapes your character and fuels success. When you're alone, you confront your weaknesses head on. You develop the strength to keep going even when motivation fades. This ability to control your mind and actions, even in silence, is what sets leaders apart. It's what makes them consistent, dependable, and powerful. So don't fear solitude. Embrace it as your training ground for self-discipline. Because the more time you spend alone mastering yourself, the stronger your impact will be in the world. Self-awareness is the foundation of growth. Without it, you're like a ship drifting without a compass. Alone time is the mirror that reflects your true self. In the quiet, you begin to notice your patterns, your thoughts, habits, and emotions. You see where you're strong and where you hold back. This honesty can be uncomfortable, but it's necessary, because only when you truly know yourself can you change and improve. Self-awareness helps you understand why you react the way you do. It reveals hidden fears and unspoken dreams. This insight gives you control over your life instead of being controlled by it. People who lack self-awareness often blame others or circumstances, but those who embrace solitude take responsibility. They become architects of their own destiny, and that kind of self-knowledge shines in communication. Your words become more authentic, your actions more intentional. You connect with others on a deeper level because you first connect with yourself. Alone time isn't loneliness. It's the space where you meet yourself honestly and grow stronger every day. Leadership is often misunderstood as commanding a crowd or being in the spotlight. But real leadership starts much earlier, when you stand alone, when you face your fears, doubts, and uncertainties without running away, when you take full responsibility for your life and your choices. Alone time is the proving ground for leaders. It's where you learn discipline, build confidence, and sharpen your clarity. It's where you develop the emotional strength to stay calm in chaos, where you listen deeply, not just to others, but to your own truth. Leaders who fear solitude depend on others for validation, but those who embrace being alone find power within. They don't just survive pressure, they thrive under it. They don't follow trends, they create new paths. The crowd might be loud, but it's the leader who is steady. Being alone teaches you to trust yourself above all else, and when you do, others naturally follow. Because true leadership is not about being the loudest voice. It's about being the strongest, clearest, and most authentic one. And that strength begins in solitude. Remember this, being alone is not your weakness. It's your greatest power. Embrace it and lead from a place no one else can reach.